Henry Cavill's Superman could have been even more powerful. The darkness that he held within himself was one of the most. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more video concerning changes for fans. At the same time, the character's powers and abilities were kept as accurate as possible. While this may have been the case in the final product of the character across 3 films, the original plan seemed to have been a lot different. During an interview, Snyder revealed his true ending for the character, and many fans would be upset with an ability he almost put into the films. Zack Snyder's vision for Superman can easily be called one of the most controversial takes on the character. While there is certainly a swarm of fans who would do anything to see Henry Cavill take on the role again, there is no denying that this take was not very accurate. There were several aspects of the character that were left out, and new additions were made that fans were not happy with. With the mass outrage over the directorial cut, it was revealed that the film was finished by Joss Whedon, who strayed very far from Snyder's original vision. During the interview, the Rebel Moon director talked about how he originally wanted to end the story for Superman's character, and it is safe to say that many would be surprised. He was going to have to succumb to the anti-life, be destroyed, turn the clock back, and then get his chance for this battle against Darkseid. If you will, that would have finished his trilogy of becoming this guardian, and sort of return him to his humanity. Zack Snyder once gave an interview with GQ, where he talked about some of his most iconic films of all time. Naturally, he touched on his work for the DC Universe, starting with Man of Steel, moving on to Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and finally talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League. The original version of the final film has been regarded as one of the most controversial films in the franchise. While he did not elaborate further on what he meant by the statement, it could be possible that he was hinting that Cavill's character would have been able to time travel by the end of the movie. While talking about a painful arc for Henry Cavill's character and his eventually becoming the purest version of himself, Snyder casually mentioned a seemingly insignificant detail that would have changed the entire DC universe. The filmmaker stated that Superman would have to turn the clock back to get another chance to fight Darkseid. According to some instances in the DC universe, if someone can run or fly fast enough, they would be able to travel through time. Since it has been mentioned in several comics that Superman is close to Flash's speed, it would not be impossible for him to time travel. The concept of time travel is not new to the DC universe, be it in comics, TV series, or movies. The Flash is most famous for messing up timelines and then struggling to clean up the mess. So much so, that Flashpoint has become one of the most infamous points in the entire franchise. Many other characters also have the same ability, however, Superman is one who is rarely shown using it. In fact, it is one of the lesser-mentioned abilities of the character, last seen in Christopher Reeve's Superman, the movie, where Clark Kent had to change history by going around the Earth extremely fast. While Snyder may have had a different potential use of Zack Snyder's controversial gimmick compared to Gladiator 2, the addition would have certainly been an interesting epic narrative. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more video. As Ridley Scott gears up to release Gladiator 2, fans of the original 2000 epic are bracing for a fresh dose of cinematic grandeur. However, despite the excitement surrounding the upcoming movie, Scott's project seemingly faced a few strikes from fans regarding its soundtrack in the trailer. Meanwhile, there appeared another potential issue, following lead actor Paul Mescal's interview. Following the success of Ridley Scott's original Gladiator, 2000, with its visceral and dynamic battle sequences, the filmmaker decided to return with similar intensity in Gladiator 2. Picking up the story 20 years after the events of the original movie, Scott hired Paul Mescal to play the titular character Lucius, glimpsed as a kid last time around, not played by Mescal. According to recent comments from Paul Mescal, the film's lead star hinted that Ridley Scott may have borrowed a page from Zack Snyder's playbook, particularly in the use of slow motion during fight scenes. This decision could prove to be a double-edged sword, in the light of some of the pitfalls that Snyder's films have faced. This time Paul Mescal's Lucius will enter the world of gladiatorial combat, promising blood, brawls, and beastly encounters set against the story of vengeance. Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2 will therefore witness Lucius facing off against Pedro Pascal's Roman general, Marcus Acacius. Meanwhile, considering the gritty take on the film, Mescal informed audiences via Empire magazine on what to expect from it. I had always had a kind of latent ambition to do something that was more muscular and physical. From a selfish side of things, I wanted to surprise an audience because I knew that I have this kind of role within me. When this came up, I was like, This is something that I don't think anybody who's seen the work that I've done previously will be expecting, and it's Ridley Scott. We made an attempt to not feel slick. You're feeling like their bodies are slowing down as they're fighting. It's not like ting ting ting. It's more brutal. You're feeling the fatigue. It's full-bore, brutal action. Considering Paul Mescal's comments, we can safely assume that Gladiator 2 will be a bloodbath. But more than anything, what we picked up from the depths of his words is Ridley Scott's attempt at a distinct cinematic style that's often seen in Zack Snyder's films, slow-motion sequences. Designed to heighten the drama of pivotal moments, as the slow-motion style has long been Snyder's staple, it seems even Scott is probably leaning towards it. When a slow-motion style is used effectively, it can intensify action scenes, allowing audiences to savor every detail of a character's struggle or triumph. Therefore, Paul Mescal's comment seems to suggest that Ridley Scott might be using it as a deliberate stylistic choice to emphasize the physicality and gravity of combat in Gladiator 2. But while slow-motion shots could enhance the epic feel, it could also end up being a risky move. Considering how Zack Snyder's reliance on heavy use of slow motion has been criticized for turning a moment of tension into a prolonged spectacle deviating from the story, Ridley Scott's decision to follow in his footsteps could end up being a risky gamble. In Snyder's films like 300, slow-motion sequences were employed to create a visually striking effect. However, critics argue that the visual flair overshadowed the plot's coherence and emotional depth. Therefore, if Ridley Scott opts to integrate slow-motion sequences as heavily as Zack Snyder does, Gladiator 2 might face similar issues. Considering how Scott previously balanced raw intensity with strategic pauses in Gladiator, the filmmaker should be able to create a similar rhythm that kept the audience on edge. But in case he fails, it might result in a massive flop. Moreover, considering how the trailer for Gladiator 2 has already sparked some skepticism, particularly regarding the film score, Ridley Scott's possible reliance on Zack Snyder-esque slow-motion style might gravely affect the film's reception. The use of slow-motion sequences, as hinted by Paul Mescal, might further fuel concerns, especially if they come across as a stylistic gimmick rather than a meaningful enhancement of the narrative in Gladiator 2. With James Gunn's DCU, fans hope to see a lot of wrongs righted after WB's disastrous handling of the DCU. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more video. James Gunn's Superman has gotten fans anticipating what the new era of the DC universe will bring for the fans after the disastrous DCU. The Guardians of the Galaxy director has promised a Superman who is much closer to the comic version of the character, as opposed to the more realistic take that Zack Snyder took with his version of Superman. While Zack Snyder's Superman took a bold and novel approach with Superman in the DCU, the character failed to resonate with the fandom at large but was well loved by a core group of fans. However, James Gunn's version of the characters is sticking to its comic roots, creating a character that is much more familiar with the larger fandom. After the experimental approach that the DCU took with its cinematic universe, James Gunn's DCU is going to focus on bringing the heroes back to their roots. With how popular the characters of DC are, the franchise need not spend the time to lay the groundwork that the MCU had to do, allowing James Gunn to dive directly into an established world to create his connected universe of characters. In all fairness, Snyder showed Superman saving people in MOS and BVS. But yes, point still stands, we need more of him doing it. There have been a significant amount of criticisms when it comes to Snyder's vision of Superman, with a slew of fans feeling that the character was not accurately represented by the 300 director in the DCU. While a slew of fans welcomed the realistic approach for the character,